Hello, and welcome to the Low E Reflective Insulation training presentation. Environmentally Safe Products Incorporated is located in New Oxford, Pennsylvania, and Carson City, Nevada. They are the sole manufacturers of the Low E Reflective Insulation product line. From raw materials to the bags and zip ties used to ship the product, Low E insulation is 100% made in America. This presentation will focus on two of Low E's most popular products, Low E Thermosheet Roofing Underlayment and Low E House Wrap. It will explain some of the science of how these energy-saving products work and provide real-world, relatable examples of how they will benefit your home or building, making it cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, and saving you money year-round. To begin, there are three types of heat transfer. The first is conduction. Conduction is heat transferring between two objects that are touching. Everyone learns about conduction at a young age when they're told not to touch the hot stove. The second type of heat transfer is convection. Convection happens when heat attaches itself to moisture and rises. Everyone has heard that heat rises, right? When you're driving down a freshly paved road and see wavy lines above the blacktop in the distance, you are witnessing convection. The third form of heat transfer, and the most important to today's presentation, is radiation. Radiation is energy or heat that comes from a source and travels at the speed of light. Think the sun or a man-made source such as oil or gas-powered boilers. Now for a few definitions. The first is R-value. Everybody knows about R-value. The building industry is consumed by it. But does anyone really know what it is? Well, the definition of R-value is resistance to conductive heat flow. I'll say it again. Resistance to conductive heat flow. R-value is all about slowing down, not stopping, only slowing down the heat that travels between two objects that are touching. We'll learn about why that distinction matters a bit later. For now, we move on to emissivity. This is where the E in Low E insulation comes from. The definition of emissivity is the measure of an object's ability to emit infrared energy. In other words, when an object is heated on one side, how much of that heat will come out on the other side. Next, we'll learn the difference between radiant barriers and reflective insulations and why the distinction is important. A radiant barrier's only job is to reflect. It reflects radiant heat. Radiant barriers are very thin. They consist of multiple layers of foil or metallized mylar. A radiant barrier has no inherent R-value and cannot add R-value to a system. Reflective insulations are part radiant barrier. They have foil or metallized mylar facings, but they also have some kind of core between those facings. Reflective insulations not only reflect, but they also add a thermal break, which reduces or prevents the flow of thermal energy, or heat, between the inside and outside of a building. Reflective insulation does have an inherent R-value, and does add R-value to a system. Most reflective insulations use metallized mylar facings, and are most commonly referred to as bubble wrap, as their core is comprised of the packaging material you'd find in a box to cushion the contents of that box. When you look at the inside of a potato chip bag, or at a happy birthday balloon, that's metallized mylar. It has an emissivity rating of about 0.05. That means it reflects about 95% of radiant heat. The core of these bubble wrap reflective insulations is usually 1 to 2 bubbles per square inch. Just like packaging material, these reflective insulations can be popped, which actually degrades the performance of the material and can become a vessel for water infiltration. Low E reflective insulation uses 99% pure aluminum facings and a core of closed-cell polyethylene foam. The aluminum facings have an emissivity rating of 0.03, which means it reflects 97% of radiant heat. Only two things reflect more radiant heat than aluminum: silver and gold. The closed-cell polyethylene foam in Low E products consists of hundreds or thousands of tiny bubbles per square inch. Instead of popping, Low E insulation actually allows for contraction and expansion. When pressure is applied, the polyethylene foam squeezes air into the surrounding bubbles and then allows the air back into those contracted bubbles to expand. Now that you know the three forms of heat transfer and the meaning of R-value and emissivity, let's look at how these things intersect and what the effects are. As you can see on the chart, the biggest culprit of heat gain and loss is radiation. Radiant heat is responsible for 50 to 85% of heat loss in the winter and up to 93% of heat gain in the summer. Remember, the definition of R-value is resistance to conductive heat flow, And now you see that conduction is only responsible for 3 to 7% of heat gain and loss. That's right. Not only does most mass insulation completely ignore the biggest culprit of heat gain and loss, it doesn't even stop conduction, it only slows the conduction down. Let's dive into our two products and the effect they can have on your home. We start here with the sun and the earth. Did you know that the sun is 93 million miles from Earth and that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second? How about that heat travels at the same speed as light? That means when the sun rises, it takes about 8 minutes for the light and the heat from the sun to reach us here on Earth. The first product we're going to talk about is Low-E Thermosheet. Low-E Thermosheet is an ICC-approved, standalone, insulated roofing underlayment. Did you ever wonder why it's 135 degrees in your attic when it's only 90 degrees outside? That's because on a 90-degree day, the temperature of the shingles on your roof is about 170 degrees. Due to conduction, when your shingles are 170 degrees, all of that heat is passing right through to your roofing underlayment. Typically, this would be 30-pound felt or some type of synthetic underlayment. Again, that 170 degrees would pass right through to the roof deck. So that 90-degree outdoor temperature and all the heat gathered up and passing through your shingles, underlayment, and roof deck leaves your attic at around 135 degrees. Once the heat passes through your roof deck and comes into the open space of your attic, it's radiant heat again, and it's looking for the next object to strike. Normally, that would be your fiberglass or other mass insulation between the studs in your attic floor. Mass insulation basically acts like a battery. It holds heat. It doesn't stop it. Remember when we talked about convection, we said everyone has heard that heat rises? Well, that is true, but it's not the whole story. One of the first laws of thermodynamics says that hot goes to cold. Heat does rise, but it also goes down, left, right, and every which way. Heat looks to displace cold wherever it is. Have you ever noticed that in the early evening, when it's starting to cool off outside, your air conditioner starts running more? That's because that mass insulation in your attic stored up that 135 degrees all day until it couldn't store any more. Once that R19 or R30 or whatever it might be is hit, the mass insulation says uncle, and all that heat is released to look for cold. In your home, what is cold? That nice air-conditioned living space of your master bedroom, living room, etc. So now, when it's cooling off outside, your air cycles more because it's trying to keep your home at 68 to 72 degrees, and that's when your energy bills really start to skyrocket. For the best way to relate to how our Thermosheet roofing underlayment works, let's talk about coffee. Believe it or not, just like your shingles on a hot day, your fresh, hot coffee is about 170 degrees. If you pour that coffee into a paper cup, you can't put it down fast enough before it starts burning your hand. But you pour that same coffee into a styrofoam cup, and you can carry it around all day long. Why is that? It's because the foam of that cup is providing a thermal break. Again, it's reducing or preventing the flow of thermal energy, or heat. In this case, from the 170 degree hot coffee into your 98.6 degree cold hand. So now if you take the same 90-degree day and the same 170 degree shingles, what happens in your attic if we add Low-E Thermosheet to the roof deck instead of a traditional underlayment? If you're using metal roofing, stone-coated steel, clay tiles, or any cladding that has an airspace inherent to its application, you're not only adding that thermal break to your roof, you are also reflecting up to 97% of radiant heat. What that means is you can drop the temperature below your roof deck up to 30 degrees or more. If you're using asphalt shingles or another type of cladding that has no airspace inherent to its application, you lose the reflectivity of our product, but you're still getting that thermal break. We have third-party verified testing that shows even without the airspace, and thus the reflectivity, our Thermosheet is still dropping the temperature below your roof deck 8 to 12 degrees. But that test is done in a closed chamber. In a closed chamber, there is no air movement. In the real world, of course, there's wind and all kinds of different variables. What we found in the real world is that just by providing a thermal break, our Thermosheet is reducing the temperature below your roof deck up to 20 degrees or more. Now, instead of your attic being 135 degrees, It's more like 100 to 115 degrees. Still hot, but much reduced. Now, instead of the mass insulation in your attic having to keep 135 degrees out of your house, it only has to keep 100 to 115 degrees out. Now, instead of your air conditioning cycling more in the early evenings, it will cycle less. This is where your energy consumption goes down and the savings in your wallet go up. Take a look at this picture. This house is somewhere in Virginia. The contractor working at this house used one of our products, very similar to our ThermoSheet, but in a retrofit application below instead of above the roof deck. It's a 16-inch on-center product that actually goes in each cavity instead of being rolled across the studs. The contractor, wondering how effective our products actually are, decided to run a little test. Snow was actually expected in the area the next day. To see what difference, if any, our product makes, the contractor put it between every cavity except for one. As you can see, the one cavity that our product was not used in let enough heat escape the attic that it melted the snow on the roof above it. That is how much heat Low-E ThermoSheet will keep out and or keep in, making your home cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, and saving you money year-round. But that's not all that Low-E ThermoSheet does. The closed-cell polyethylene foam core of Low-E ThermoSheet also self-seals around fasteners. There are thousands of nails penetrating your roof deck. Water travels the path of least resistance, and so with one little nail pop, that water can find its way in and start rotting your roof from the inside out. Low-E ThermoSheet helps reduce that risk drastically. It's also a sound deadener, helping to keep your home quieter. Now, instead of a roofing underlayment that only serves as a weatherization barrier, you can have one that serves as your weatherization barrier, vapor barrier, and insulation, while also keeping your home quieter. Isn't it time your roofing underlayment did more? One more great thing about Low-E ThermoSheet is how easy it is to install. It installs much like any traditional underlayment, with one key difference that doubles as another bonus feature of the product. With Low-E ThermoSheet, the overlap is built in. With most traditional underlayments, you lose 10% or more of the product in overlaps. Low-E ThermoSheet has a 4-inch foil flange that runs the length of the roll and acts as the overlap, meaning you get full 5-square coverage from every roll. Here is a short Low-E ThermoSheet install video.
How to install Low-E ThermoSheet, an insulated, ICC-approved, standalone roofing underlayment. Begin installing the bottom run. For the first run only, the 4-inch bottom flange must be tucked under the ThermoSheet at the gutter edge, or, alternatively, the flange can face upwards towards the ridge. Either method allows for a clean, straight edge to be used at the gutter edge. Cap nails, corrosive-resistant nails, or staples with 1-inch crowns should be used. For all subsequent runs, the product should be rolled out naturally, left to right, with the flange facing down towards the gutter edge. The product is placed with the flange overlapping the previous run. This flange is a built-in overlap as to avoid having to overlap the core of the product. These seams must be taped with ESP Low-E tape or other approved seam tape to provide a flat, permanent, waterproof seam. Make sure to tape at flashing areas, valleys, chimneys, and around any other protrusions, such as vents or pipes.
The second product we're going to talk about is Low-E House Wrap. Low-E House Wrap is an ICC-approved, standalone, insulated house wrap. It works in the same way as Low-E ThermoSheet, except for your walls instead of your roof. Behind hollow back vinyl siding, Low-E House Wrap adds R4 to your wall assembly. For the best way to relate to how our Low-E House Wrap works, let's talk about Low-E windows. Everybody has heard of Low-E windows, but does anybody really know what they are or why you need them? The E in Low-E windows, just like Low-E insulation, stands for emissivity. There are two things that make Low-E windows different from regular non-Low-E windows. First, when Low-E windows are cooling and still in a molten state, 6 different metals are sputter coated to the window. Among these metals is aluminum. The purpose of the sputter coating is to reflect radiant heat. Second, between the 2 panes of glass of a Low-E window, a small hole is punched in the seal and argon gas is injected. Argon is denser than oxygen, and therefore it slows down the transfer of radiant heat. It's often said that replacing your windows with low-E windows can save you up to 30% or more on your heating and cooling costs. Yet windows only make up about 15% of the average home's wall space. So the question is, if you're going to low-E your windows, why not low-E your entire wall? Take a look at this picture. This house is somewhere in Pennsylvania. Notice how prominently the studs in the wall system show through the siding of the house. This is known as thermal bridging. Mass insulation in a wall system is stuffed into the cavities between the studs of your wall. But where there is no insulation, all of the heat in your house conducts right through those 2x4 studs, which make up about 20 to 25% of your walls. That means that up to 1/4 of your wall system is uninsulated. In the summer, think of how much heat you gain through those studs. Conversely, think of how much heat you lose in the winter. Much like low-E thermosheet on the roof, low-E house wrap provides a thermal break to your walls. This stops the thermal bridging process and helps keep all that heat from entering or exiting your home. And again, just like low-E thermosheet, low-E house wrap is also a sound deadener that can help to make your home quieter. Now, instead of having a house wrap that only serves as a weatherization barrier, you can have one that serves as a weatherization barrier and insulation, while also keeping your home quieter. Isn't it time your house wrap did more? One more great thing about low-E house wrap is how easy it is to install. It installs much like any traditional house wrap, with one key difference that doubles as another bonus feature of the product. With low-E house wrap, the overlap is built in. With most traditional house wraps, you lose 10% or more of the product in overlaps. Low-E house wrap has a 2-inch foil flange that runs the length of the roll and acts as the overlap, meaning you get full 5-square coverage from every roll. Here is a short low-E house wrap install video.
How to install low-E house wrap, an insulated ICC-approved standalone house wrap. ESP Low-E house wrap is installed over exterior wall sheathing prior to or after the installation of windows or doors. If windows and doors have been installed, the low-E house wrap must be trimmed as close to the windows and door openings as possible and sealed with low-E seam tape. Low-E house wrap rolls should be placed approximately 6 inches from the start of a corner and fastened to the sheathing with corrosion-resistant nails having minimum 1-inch diameter plastic heads or corrosion-resistant staples having minimum 1-inch crowns. Fasteners must be placed a maximum of 16 inches on center both vertically and horizontally. Low-E house wrap must be installed with the foil facing out, visible to the exterior. There are 2.5-inch foil flanges for horizontal seams on one end of each roll of low-E house wrap. Upper courses are to overlap lower courses in a shingle-like manner. For vertical seams, butt foam edges of 2 rolls and tape the seam. All vertical and horizontal flange seams should be taped with low-E seam tape. Any areas of low-E house wrap that have been slightly damaged or compromised during installation can also be patched with low-E seam tape. Please refer to window and door manufacturers' suggested installation tips for installing low-E house wrap over framed openings. When low-E house wrap is used over foam sheathing, it must be attached with roofing nails or approved fasteners whose length exceeds the foam thickness by a minimum of 1/2 inch.
This picture sums up the main point of low-E insulation products. Whether you use our low-E house wrap, our low-E thermosheet, or any of our other energy-saving low-E products, you're helping to keep your home cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, and you're saving money all year around. In conclusion, here are the key points to remember when thinking about low-E insulation. It provides additional R value. It qualifies for tax credits. Its core self-seals around fasteners. It's ICC approved standalone. It prevents thermal bridging by providing a thermal break. It helps to dampen sound. It provides true 5-square coverage. And most importantly, it lowers your energy bills and saves you money. All of that, and it's 100% made in America.